Yes, everybody, welcome back to Talking Wolves. Welcome back to a new match preview on the channel. Hope you guys are keeping well, and we are here for another pre-match video as Wolves are on their travels to Newcastle United this week in the Premier League. A start of a really tough run of fixtures for Wolves and a real test for Vitor Pereira and the squad. But if we can get some points on the board over the next couple of weeks, all being well, Wolves will still be in a half-decent position. We've just got to weather the storm for the next month or so. Some really tricky games. But before we kick off and jump into the preview, once again, a big shout out to our channel partners over at Stocks FC. A big chance for you guys to put your money where your mouth is in regards to football. If you think you know your football, you know quality players, and you think you've got an eye for talent, then be sure to go and check out Stocks FC using the QR code or the link in the top of the description. This month, you'll get 5 free loan players as well to get you started onto your Stocks FC journey. So be sure to go and check them out using the link in the top of the description or the QR code down below, and I'll be sure to keep you guys updated with how some of my players are getting on as well. But a trip to Newcastle this week, it's a tricky one for Wolves. Newcastle are on unbelievable form at the moment. They're sat in 5th place in the Premier League, and which I'll go on to later on in the opposition perspective. You'll hear some of the teams that they've been beating, but you know, smashing some of the guys down towards the bottom end of the table, beating some of the bigger boys that are on some decent form. And they did get an FA Cup victory as well, although they had a little scare against Bromley as they went 1-0 down. They ended up winning that game pretty comfortably, 3-1. They did rotate that team quite a lot as well. So on paper, Wolves have had an extra day's rest. But if you remember against Bristol City, Wolves started off probably close to a team that they'll probably start tomorrow night against Newcastle. Whereas Newcastle, we did see quite a lot of rotation. There will be some players in that team that started that will play this game, and they brought on some of their big boys off the bench throughout the game as well. But a really tricky test, especially away from home. I've not looked at any of the numbers. You'll see some of the stats flashing up across the screen. Sort of historically, since we've come back into the Premier League, they've been very close affairs in Newcastle. A lot of draws in there, but I seem to remember over the last 12, 18 months, they seem to have got the better of us. I wasn't there for the reverse fixture at Molineux, but you know, Wolves went 1-0 up and ended up throwing that game away, which was a little bit frustrating. But going into this one now, we've had Vitor Pereira's press conference today. I enjoy listening to Vitor's press conferences. He just seems, and I'm not saying Gary O'Neill was negative or downbeat, just Vitor just seems to be a much more enjoyable listen at the moment. Just in terms of how he talks about the game, talks about individuals and so on. But in terms of players, now at the end of the game against Bristol City, he had already said Craig Dawson, Totti and Semedo were going to be out for this game. However, he's changed that a little bit. He said Dawson's available, Nelson Semedo is available, and Mario Lemina will be available. Totti's had a little bit of a setback, so still going to be out a little bit longer than expected. But Lemina, who he was pretty, he was pretty harsh about towards the end of last week. Maybe not harsh, that's the wrong word, but quite straight about him, and says if he wants to stay at Wolves, he needs to sort himself out, basically. And I'm sure that message has got back to Mario Lemina, who obviously has been linked with away, but he will be available for this game if needed, so I assume we'll see him on the bench. Craig Dawson and Semedo back as well. Matheus Cunha back, which is a huge plus for Wolves. Of course, we've got Boyat in the FA Cup. We struggled a little bit against Forest for an outlet, really. I thought we played okay against Forest. I think the 3-0 definitely flattered them. That was, of course, our last Premier League game. But Matheus coming back fresh and fit, hopefully, it's going to be a huge boost for us. And so Semedo and Dawson, of course, the numbers. I think the bench over the last couple of weeks has looked a little bit weaker than normal. So those guys back, and obviously Agbadou coming in, you would assume, for his first Premier League start as well. So, I mean, I'll chuck on my predicted lineup here, and although the likes of Semedo are back, I don't think they'll automatically start. I only say this because if you've gone from saying a player is out on Saturday to on Tuesday saying they're back in, surely they're not 100% fit and 100% sharp. So I would say Jose Sarr comes in goal, back in for Sam Johnston. A back 5 of Ryan Aït-Nouri. Rodrigo Gomez keeping his place at right wing back, because again, Vitor was very complimentary of him in the on the pre-match press conference. And the 3 centre backs of Agbadou, Santi Bueno and Matt Doherty keeping his place. Andre and João Gomez in the middle too. And then Jorgen Strand Larsen leading in line with Cunha and Gonçalo Guedes either side of him. I would be very surprised if that is not the lineup tomorrow. Maybe Semedo comes in, but other than that, I think he will keep with that same lineup, to be completely honest. Again, unless there's any late fitness news or major news, which I'm sure we'll post on Talking Wolves before the game. But let me know your thoughts on that lineup. But like I said, it's going to be such a tricky match for Wolves, and interested to see how we react. If we can get points from games like this, I mean, I would probably take a point right now, but if we can get points, nick points, and possibly even wins from games like tomorrow and games like Chelsea, that will do us a world of good, because ultimately we're still in a relegation battle. We're level on points with Ipswich, who are in the bottom three. We need to be picking up points, and any sort of points over the next few weeks, it's going to be massive for Wolves. So fingers crossed we can get them. But we'll move on to the opposition perspective now. It's great to speak to a good friend of mine, Mad, who's a Newcastle fan from the Irish Mags podcast. Huge proper fans over there in Ireland that's supporting and following Newcastle. So great to chat to him and get his thoughts on Newcastle and their fantastic form recently in the league. Turn on, I've got to do the main preview in a minute as well. Let's get it all chucked out ASAP. Sorry, just get it all sorted. Sound. Ready yet?
Yes.
Sound. So then, guys, delighted to welcome Paul Madden, a good friend of mine, Mad, back on the show to give the Newcastle perspective ahead of this week's game. Mad, it's great to have you back. How you been keeping, man?
Yeah, not too bad. It's a good time to be a Newcastle fan, Dave. I don't know if it's a good time to be visiting St. James's Park when you're in mixed form like yourselves, but we're having a great time at the moment. Can't stop winning.
Yeah, I mean, I've just looked at your form before we started the video, and I knew you were on good form, but I probably didn't realise and appreciate how good it was. I mean, if you look back from mid-December, really, you smashed Leicester, you beaten Brentford in the EFL quarters, smashed Ipswich, you smashed Villa, you beat United away in the league, you beat Spurs away in the league, you've just beaten Arsenal in the FA Cup. Bromley probably gave you the biggest scare out of them all, I think, and going 1-0 up. But I mean, you look in the league table, mate. Like, I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if there was a narrative where Newcastle just sort of, I don't know if there was any sort of blip this season, but you're definitely amongst it now in those European qualification positions. You look like you mean in business at the moment.
Yeah, I think, well, up to, if we just kind of park December, up to, let's end of November, we were hot and cold. We were doing really well against kind of bigger teams. Like we had kind of a good shift against, like we beat Spurs, good shift against Man City. Obviously beat Arsenal earlier in the league as well at home. But then we were dropping points, like we lost to West Ham at home. You know, we've dropped points against Brighton, Bournemouth, and even some of those wins that we had. Like, obviously, we have already played Wolves this season. They weren't brilliant performances. So, yeah, it's just, I think it's just taken some time to settle in. But there's a couple of things which I'm sure we'll talk about, particularly in midfield, that are now clicking. And when I say clicking, I mean like really impressive. Everyone's looking at this midfield, and it does help when your striker just can't stop scoring, and boy, he can't stop scoring at the moment, Alexander Isak.
Yeah, I mean, I look at I wasn't actually there for the game at Molineux. That's when I was away for the darts in Amsterdam, so I never really caught that game. And obviously, you would have seen a lot more of Newcastle than I have this season, Mad. But you mentioned individuals there. I mean, Isak's had form, which is, and it's mainly due to injuries, isn't he? He's really struggled to stay fit consistently. And then you've had Sandro Tonali back in, who we spoke about sort of last week together. Are they two of the main reasons why you think Newcastle are, starting to win a lot more football matches and looking a lot more comfortable in matches again now?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. The Tonali thing, I mean, yes, he's playing unbelievable football. It's that 10 months out. His engine, his fitness levels. He looks as fit after 10 minutes as he does at 80 minutes. It's almost like he's still running around like crazy, but it's also the tactical element of it. For a long time, Bruno was in the middle of a midfield three, and you would kind of have like Tonali and Joe Linton either side. And it just wasn't really working, and they were almost both tending to do similar things. Eddie Howe just came along there roughly beginning of December, end of November, and swapped it. Very simple swap. And just said, like, put Sandro in the middle and said, you sit, Bruno push on. I think it was, probably a hesitation because Bruno is so used to coming deep, getting the ball. He's so press resistant. He gets fouled so often. It's insane. He's got like the highest fouls by a mile in the league so far this year. But he touches the ball a lot less now as a result of this change position. He's in a more advanced role, more like an 8. But what it's done is it's allowed Bruno to actually push on and get up the field. He's actually picked up quite a few assists. I think he's on 5 since this change. And Tonali just, I suppose, is just a bit more protecting the midfield. Not going, he'll go forward when he sees the opportunity, but he's not doing it all the time. So that change definitely has helped. And then, Tonali's been brilliant in some individual games. And as I said, it's his engine, his awareness. you can just see the quality. What they went and spent 55 million on him before he got that ban. And you and I have known Sandro Tonali for many, many years from a football manager perspective,
Yeah.
as well as keep seeing what he was doing with AC Milan, Champions League semi-final, and so on. So really exciting time to have him in there with Bruno and Joe Linton, and it's just a really strong midfield.
Yeah.
We know how good Bruno is on the ball, and Joe Linton just breaks everything down. He's so physical. He's a nightmare for opposition teams because he just his physicality. They struggle to match it. He breaks down a lot of
I
play.
think
He challenges.
the midfield battle will be interesting because obviously that's probably
Mm.
one of Wolves' strengths at the moment, and it's going to be quite a Brazilian affair, I think, in the middle as well. Because I would
Yeah,
assume we will play João Gomez and Andre, so that'll be quite an interesting battle
four
in the
Brazilians in
midfield.
the midfield there. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I mean, and the strike force. I mean, the goals for you. We mentioned him, Alexander Isak, who's on fire at the moment. Who has always had the capability and the talent. I think he's always been rated, but just struggled that little bit with fitness. But I say that as he may be a doubt for tomorrow, possibly. I think, but I
There's
mean,
a small question mark because he had a small niggle, but he got his rest against Bromley. I'd be very surprised now not to see him.
yeah.
It would take a lot for Eddie Howe not to start him, I think, rather than maybe mind him and manage his minutes.
But talk to me about him because he's on fire at the moment. I think Anthony Gordon started to chip in a little bit more with goal contributions, which I think Newcastle missed a little bit. But Isak's just on fire at the moment. He's scoring every opportunity he gets, pretty much.
Yeah, it's a funny one. There's never been any doubt on his ability.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe the first couple of months of the season we weren't getting the best supply of the ball into him, which I think is fair to say. We were chopping and changing on the right and the left. We've been trying to solve the problem of the right wing kind of position for Newcastle. Gordon was being put over there. Barnes was being put over there. Joe Linton was there for a while. And then obviously then the left is changing as a result of those. He's finally settled now with Gordon on the left, which is his best position, I think, by a mile. And I think it makes sense because Anthony Gordon is probably looking at that England left side position and saying, well, that's there for the taking because is he ever going to get in ahead of Saka? Unlikely. So I think the supply there has worked. And for whatever reason, and nobody's really seen this coming, Jacob Murphy and his link up play with Alexander Isak is flying. He's a very direct ringer. He's right-footed. He just go up and down the line, doesn't cut inside too much, looks for crosses, just does a lot of simple things well. And maybe just, opposition fullbacks just aren't as used to it with everybody else cutting inside now from this role. So he's assisted Isak 6 times this season already.
Wow.
I think it's the highest across all domestic competitions. Obviously, we don't have Europe. But back on Isak, he gets in the right places at the right time. He creates his own goals. He gets on the end of, obviously good crosses. He never stops moving, runs the channels really well, pulls out wide, and even comes deep to get the ball. I think it was the Arsenal game. This is Gabriel and Saliba, the best defensive partnership for the last 2 seasons, probably. They did not know what to do with Isak because he was just so mobile. He was dropping deep, linking up play, then getting the ball spread out wide, and then suddenly he's popping up in the box. He's just, I suppose, when strikers start scoring, the confidence is building, but it just goes back to I think it's his work rate, intelligence. He just makes life very difficult for the opposition defense.
I don't think it's much as a worry for this window because I think there'll be very few high profile departures. But I think are Newcastle fans concerned about his future? I mean, Newcastle are a big club and they've got knocking on the door for European football. So for you guys, you probably aren't as worried as maybe as neutral fans would be looking in at you guys. I mean, do you have any doubts, or do you think he's there for the foreseeable? Really?
I think for me, it goes hand in hand with how we perform, right?
Yeah.
If Newcastle are in the Champions League and we're well in the race right now, as it stands, we're 5th. There's still a lot of the season to go, but we're carrying a lot of momentum
as well, aren't you? Yeah.
Exactly, yeah, and it looks like it's almost a certainty that 5th place will go to Champions League. So there's every reason to believe we can get it, and if we were to get it again, there's no reason in my mind why Isak would want to leave unless he has ambitions to go and play for a specific club. But realistically, his value is going up every week.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of jokes with Arsenal fans. They were videoed at that FA Cup game, Carabao Cup game, singing "Welcome Home" to Alexander Isak as he got off the bus. I think baffling.
The funny thing is as well, and we have this quite a bit with Cunha, I don't think rival fans understand how much you actually paid for Isak as well. So you're not going to sell him for the same price because what was it? Maybe 70
million?
He's our
all-time record, 70 million.
Yeah, so you're not going to sell him for 70 million. if you were to let him
Absolutely
go,
not.
it would have to be for a handsome profit. So you're talking,
Mm.
and with the form that he's in, if he can stay fit, you have every right to. You're talking north of 100 million, aren't you?
Well,
Ultimately.
yeah, I mean, they're already saying it. The 150 number is going around. It's a
Wow.
hell of a lot of cash, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But if you're looking at the market and you say, well, if Declan Rice, Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez, if these guys are all 100 million,
yeah,
they don't give you what Alexander Isak is giving you. And right now, Alexander Isak is giving you 25, 30 goal a season form. Obviously, he's not there yet, but
yeah.
got 21 last season. First Newcastle player to break 20 since Shearer, basically,
Wow. Yeah.
in the league. So, uh, yeah, again, they're trying to. There's been a lot of talk about his contract. He doesn't have a short contract, but he's not one of the highest earners yet. I'm sure there's a lot of discussions happening. We'd like to obviously lock that down. I don't know if
Mm.
there's a release fee in there or not. I don't believe there's one there currently, unless they plan to put one in later. But to go back on your point, if Newcastle have ambitions to match the ambition of these big players, we PSR stops us from spending, but it's not like we're desperate to sell.
Yeah.
Um, if someone comes along with 150 million,
Oh, you got to
how could
consider
any
it.
club?
Yeah.
It's very hard for any club to turn that down. But who can afford that now?
No.
You'd argue not very many at all.
Yeah. Is there much business to be done, do you think, for Newcastle this month? I mean, there's only a couple of weeks left of the window. Is there much business there to be done, do you think? Or is it going to be a quiet window for you guys?
I think I would expect it to be fairly quiet. Now we're quite lucky this season compared to last season. We had an absolute injury crisis this time last year. We had about 14 players out at one point, all at the same
Mm.
time. Now, as we speak, Nick Pope is out. He's due back in the next couple of weeks, and then it's just Callum Wilson, who's perennially injured and will
Yeah.
be injured for all time. And bar that, I think Jamal Lascelles has an injury, but we've been quite lucky with the squad. We did bring in a new kind of head of sports science, let's say, James Bunce. I'd imagine there's been a lot of work done there to look at fitness because Eddie Howe is a very high intensity style of play. The training sessions are tough.
Mm.
We had Champions League last season and we had a lot of injuries with all the extra games. Now, touch wood, dare I jinx it, we've actually been doing quite well on that front. Even looking at, we were linked with Mark A in the summer. Now
Yeah.
we've got a choice of Dan Byrne, Fabian Scher, Sven Botman are all fit now and ready for selection. So you wouldn't think we need to go and drop some money on a centre back. The right wing position comes up a lot. I've just mentioned Jacob Murphy. Jacob Murphy's been at the club a long time. He's 27, 28. There is a lot of kind of talk to say, is he going to be good enough, for our ambitions to go to the Champions League?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the one position I'd be looking at, but very hard to get or fill that role in January without having the pants pulled down from a financial perspective.
Yeah, I think if you can, especially with the form that you're in, really. I mean, it's easy to be linked or sort of think, right, let's try and bring somebody in that's high profile. But this month you are going to be paying the premium. So I think if Newcastle can get by until the summer, and it'll be interesting to see if you continue this strong form. I mean, you play against the Wolves team, who, like you said at the start of this segment, strange form. You don't really know what to expect from Wolves going into this game. Every game under Vitor Pereira, we've played well. Even in his only defeat against Forest, we played quite well. Mateus Cunha's back, which is a massive boost for us. So it will be an interesting game. I think Newcastle seem to have got the better of us over the last year or so. But obviously before that, it was always a close affair. There's so many draws. I think they're probably one of the highest percentages of draws in a particular fixture in the league without having to look at it well.
I think we had 4 1-1s in a row. I'm looking at from 2019 to 2021 or something. 1-1, 1-1, 1-1, 1-1.
I bet you if I go on now very
shifted
quickly, like the pre-match stats, I bet it comes up. Yeah, Newcastle versus Wolves has ended as a draw 11 of the 19 games it's been played in the Premier League. The highest ratio of any fixture to be played at least 15 times in the competition. There you go. So
There you
I
go.
think, again, I think a lot of Wolves fans would probably take a point going into this game. I think we've got such a tough run in. We've got you guys, and then we've got Chelsea away. Then we play Arsenal at Molineux. We've got a really tough run in. I think if Wolves can just nick points here and there, I think they'll take it, especially with the form that you guys are in. I think Wolves fans, if I offered them a point right now, would probably snap my arm off. But we'll wait and see. Matt, if I had to sort of trouble you for a rough prediction, what you're thinking in terms of scores and so on, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I was on another podcast talking about this. Again, looking at the form that we were in, we were able to rest a whole bunch of players at the weekend for the FA Cup because we had Bromley. So we've got, a fairly healthy squad coming back again, assuming Isaac is fit as well. I'd find it hard, like the St James's Park factor alone. You just mentioned Wolves fans would take a point. You should be happy to take a point coming up to St James's Park, because it's just a notoriously hard place to go. And yeah, I'd be amazed to see anything but 3 points for Newcastle. Just again, based on the fact that we've hopefully a fit firing squad, a lot of players in good form. I'd probably be looking at something along the lines of a 3-0 or a 3-1 if you were pushing on it.
Yeah, I mean, your form speaks for itself. Like I mentioned at the start, winning games, knocking on the door of that top four now. You're only 1 point behind Chelsea, 5 points behind Forest, who are having an unbelievable season as well. So
Crazy.
it certainly will be interesting. But, Matt, I look at the rest of the season as well. Wish you all the best. EFL Cup, which will be interesting. Obviously, still in the FA Cup, as are we. But yeah, and I'm sure I'll speak to you, all being well, again next season on the channel, because obviously this is the second time we've played. So hopefully we hold on and stay up and we can talk Premier League action again. But where can people find you and the Irish Mags podcast if they wish?
Yeah, it's the Irish Mags show on YouTube and all of the socials at the Irish Mags. So we're the official, let's say, Irish Newcastle supporters group. About 600 plus of us floating around here. And I also do a bit of work with True Faith. I don't know if you some of the listeners may be familiar with those guys as well. So you can check them out too.
Yeah, I'll make sure I leave a link. These guys are proper fans of, because Matt, you probably go and watch Newcastle a lot more than some fans that I know that watch other football teams as well. So you've probably been to St James's at least a handful of times already this season, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, this season, yeah, I think I've done 4 or 5 already.
Which
so
is
I live in
mad
the west
to me.
of Ireland, so
Obviously,
yeah,
some people, I know people, even Wolves fans, travel a fair bit for each game, but there are some fans that maybe only go and watch their team once or twice. But these guys, travel, spend a lot of money to it. So
if we can get the tickets, we'll be there. The flights and the buses and the trains and the points will follow.
Yeah, no, exactly, mate. Well, thanks for jumping on again. Apart from Wednesday night, mate, all the best for the rest of the season, and I'll catch you soon anyway. I'll see you soon, man.
Likewise, man. Cheers.
Thank you. So big thanks to Mad. I'll make sure I leave a link to him and their podcast in the description down below if you want to go and check them out. And score prediction for me, I'll take a 1-1 right now, I think. Newcastle have got a lot of quality, but we've just got to cut out any silly mistakes. We do our jobs, and we've got every chance of getting a result here. And hopefully the effect of Mateus Cunha coming back in is going to be massive for Wolves. And hopefully he's on his A game to try and grab us 3 points if possible. As always, guys, be sure to hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel. Be sure to go and check out Stocks FC. I'll make sure I leave a link to that, and obviously the QR code on the screen to start your journey off now if you haven't already. And let me know your score predictions in the comment section down below. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys. Fingers crossed for 3 points for Wolves on Wednesday night, and I'll catch you on the next one.